Hi, this is Tim of the 1916 Company. Welcome and thanks for logging on. If you love this watch, email us, Team Mosso at the1916company.com for purchase pricing and availability questions regarding this watch. Today, we discuss a fascinating tribute launched in 2018 from Zenith. This is the Cronometro Tipo CP-2 Flyback. So technically the Zenith Pilot Cronometro Tipo CP-2 Flyback. It's an homage to a mid-1960s Italian Air Force special built by Zenith and most famously retailed by a Corelli. It was a pre-El Primero chronograph, and this one here is powered by an El Primero movement. So two very different threads of Zenith history bound in one 43mm burnished steel case. 43 is the diameter. It's actually fairly slender at 13.1 millimeters thick, 52 millimeters from lug tip to lug tip with a 22 millimeter spacing between the lugs. You can see how the lugs are tightly downturned. There's a real curvature here. So although it's a big watch and my wrist is only 16 centimeters circumference, it's actually a pretty good match. I think if your wrist is my size or larger, you're going to find this fits just fine. Because the case back is cupped and tapered, strap it down and it actually sits very flat. I do think you could actually fit this underneath a dress cuff, and you can see my cuff is intruding on the picture already. Over the top, exaggerating the width, this is the angle you want. Let me pull my sleeve out of the way for easier perspective. You could see that although the lugs are out to the edge of my wrist, because of the curve, it's not visually offensive. It's a big watch, and that works from a tool watch standpoint because it's just more visible. Interesting leather, oily nubuck calfskin. So nubuck is always a very sort of suede texture, and then the oily element, you might wonder if that's safe for formal attire. It's not something that rubs off on your skin. It's not something you can smear on paper. It doesn't express itself on cloth. It's more of a slick or silky sheen. You feel it, but it's not a loose sort of animal oil, something that could express itself on another surface. It is intrinsic to the strap, but it's also confined to the strap. There's a nice vintage style contrasting binding here, and you can see the rest of the strap is bonded in its fabrication. So the top and the rubber layer on the bottom are held together using primarily adhesives, so there's no stitch pattern. It's got a little bit of bolstering to give it thickness. You can see on the back the rubber, a nice feature of modern Zenith OEM straps, and you can see this one's brand new. The rubber isolates the leather of the strap from the moisture, heat, sweat, and grit of the wrist for a silky feel, but also a long-lasting strap. We've got a little Zenith star and a buckle to match the case, you can see right there. The case, though, has an element the buckle does not have. It's first been PVD coated and then burnished, and this is like a get out of jail free card. If you like to wear watches but you hate that first scratch, Zenith has added the first 2,000 or so scratches. And if you look carefully, you can see that there is a little bit of a directionality to the burnishing, but the wear through of the PVD and the metal underneath so disrupted and chaotic that you'll never be able to tell if you do put a mark on it. So designed to look like the 1960s originals as they've aged over time, what it really does is make the watch a whole lot less stressful to own. Now, there's a nice expanding bevel on the end of the lug, and you can see that the lugs are quite nicely tapered. They have a fineness to them as they terminate. The midcase is also fairly thin, which is a distinctive feature of seemingly every vintage watch. Really thick midcases are a product of the modern era. You can see the burnishing continues on the bezel edge, which has a micro knurling that is super sharp and easy to grip. Now, taking a quick look, you can see that the bezel is bidirectional, so it's aviation style. And we will count the clicks. Let's do this. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. So it can be placed with precision. It's got the 120 click indexing of a really fine dive bezel, but the bidirectionality of a pilot's instrument style timing bezel. Let's do a quick loom shot so you can see the scope of the loom here, which does include the bezel pearl as well as the chronograph seconds hand, and this is a fair amount of luminescence. You'll also appreciate the fact that the watch doesn't have a cloying fauxtina. Somehow, despite all of the vintage and patinated elements, they decided to go without patina, and I cheer them for that. You could see that The handset is very vintage in fashion, and it's a twin register dial that does a good job of disguising the disparity between case size and the underlying El Primero 405. What they do give you is a lovely gradient fading from light at the center, darker at the edge, with a distinct granular finish, and it's a perfect match for the tone and texture of the strap as well as the burnishing of the case. So you can see the crown right here. A quick note on the crown: this is a watch that has both a push-down crown and, thanks to excellent case sealing, a 100-meter depth rating, so you can absolutely swim with this. Just put it on a water-resistant strap. The watch does not feature a hacking seconds function because that is not a feature of a traditional El Primero, but it does feature the flyback capability, so you can reset and restart with a single push of the reset trigger. And it's got a great feel, being an El Primero column wheel chronograph, but not just any column wheel, one of the best. For feel, it really distinguishes itself in that regard. Turning it all over, the El Primero 405 is the flyback version of a standard El Primero. It's still got the 10 beat per second, 36,000 vibration per hour beat rate. It's a bidirectional winder. It's got a 50-hour power reserve, 31 pivot joules, and one element I really like about the El Primero is that even though it is an automatic chronograph, the winding bridge is so spare you can see almost everything. You can see the clutch, you can see the column wheel, you can see the levers, horns, and the reset hammers. And as a result, this is a automatic chrono that's almost as attractive to the eye as a manual wind chrono. And while the elements are machine finished, they're so nicely detailed that you don't really mind. And there's also a lot of under the radar stuff going on. You can see how we have both polished and blued screws, but if you look very carefully, you can see that they serve different purposes for the watchmaker, with the blued screws generally associated with regulation of the mechanism, and the polished ones being associated with physical fixtures that are static and non-adjustable. There is a lot to love here, and one of the great chronograph movements in all of history. Launched in 1969, it was one of the first 3 automatic chronograph calibers, and of the 3, it was the only one that was automatic, integrated, and high beat. To this day, that 10 beat per second chronograph sweep remains a distinctively smooth and distinguishing element of a Zenith El Primero movement. Reach out to Team Mosso at the 1916company.com for purchase and pricing details.